Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Am I audible? Student online, am I audible? Please confirm. Okay, so today in this session, we are going to discuss the questions of test 1, right? And we will understand how to interpret the demand of the question, because all these questions which we have framed for senior batches are very, very analytical questions. And many students who have given 2 or 3 mains or maybe interviews, even they find it difficult to interpret the core demand of the question, right? And why we face the problem as far as the core demand of the question is concerned, because when we interpret the question, we interpret it with the very narrow base, with a very narrow sense. We try to pick up the keywords, we try to focus on the each and every statement of the question, and then we start structuring the answer. But that is not how you should do it, right? As I always say in the brainstorming sessions also, that whenever you are reading any particular question, there is always one core demand which you need to identify, because you are going to get the marks based on that core demand. There cannot be multiple core demand in the question, because there will be only one issue, and based on that issue the question will be framed, right? So you have to identify what is that particular issue or the core concept which the question is asking. If you are able to identify that, it's well and good. Otherwise, if you are going to pick up each and every keyword, if you are going to focus on each and every statement in the question, you will be running out of time, you will be running out of space as well. And this is the reason why we are not able to complete the paper in time, because we focus on each and every statement of the question, every keyword. That is how we have been taught. एक एक keywords को उठाओ and try to address it. Okay, so we will see what is the idea, and also I will be dealing with the tail words in this session. How to interpret the tail word in a very layman terms. Right, I'll give you a very simple analogy when you are thinking about a particular tail word, right? So, for example, the first question is: the Supreme Court has observed that the law must adapt to changing social concepts and values. In this light, assess the constitutional morality act as a assess how the constitutional morality act as a normative framework for balancing legal continuity with social transformation. Correct? So, whenever you are reading any question, there are 3 terms you always have to focus on, right? The first part is, what is the tail word in the question? What is the scope of statement in the question? And what are the various or the keywords in the question, right? So based on these 3 parameters, we identify what is the demand of the question, or where to put more focus when you are analyzing the statement itself, right? Now, as when you will go for the literal interpretation, right? If you are going with the literal interpretation, for example, the Supreme Court has observed that the law must adapt to changing social concept and values, right? So according to literal interpretation, this will be your first core demand of the question, right? Then in this light, assess how constitutional morality act as a normative framework for balancing legal continuity with social transformation. Now you will get confused here. कि question क्या बोल रहा है कि how the constitutional morality act as a normative framework, right, in balancing legal continuity with social transformation. अब आप यहां पे confused हो जाओगे. Trust me on this. You are going to get confused with this particular statement, right? So, in a very simple terms, whenever you are reading the question, you need to interpret the question in a simplest possible manner, right? So, in the very simple terms, the question basically wants you to assess, right? Assess how the constitutional morality. The question is basically assess. So, you need to assess how the constitutional morality basically act as the normative framework, right? Now, how constitutional morality act as a normative framework? This is now my core demand of the question. This is where I need to apply all the knowledge, all the value addition points, whatever the data examples you can quote. This is my core demand of the question, right? So again, if still you are confused, again I will give you a very simple example. Basically, how the constitutional morality has, or how it can help the judiciary as far as the interpretation of law is concerned for social transformation, right? So, in very simple terms, the question is how the constitutional morality can guide or guiding Supreme Court in interpretation of the law for social transformation. This is my core demand of the question. This is where I am going to add maximum number of points, right? Now, when the question says assess, what does it mean? Assess का क्या मतलब होता है? Assess is basically a critical command word, right? It's a critical command word. So critical command word ka matlab, we need to understand when we say the critical command word, what does it mean? Many students, they are confused whether to use the right keyword. Some students are writing issues, some are writing challenges. They are basically interchanging these words. This is very wrong. It will change the tone of your answer itself. When you are talking, when you are writing issues and when you are writing challenges, there is a difference. Challenges we face when we try to implement it, or the challenges we face from the front when we try to implement anything. So if the Supreme Court is basically trying to use or trying to apply the constitutional morality for social or constitutional morality to interpret the law for the social transformation, it may be facing some challenges. So issues word nahi aayega, right? Many students are confused here what to write. Issues are existing in the system. हमारे यहाँ issues हैं. We have already some issues in our society, because of which this question is asked, that the constitutional morality should act as a normative framework in balancing legal continuity with social transformation. Because of these issues, this question is asked. And question is asking what is the application of constitutional morality, right? As far as the interpretation of the laws for social transformation is concerned, right? So these are the issues. This is my core demand. And then I will write down the challenges. Is it clear now, everyone? Right? Clear, every online students on YouTube? Is it clear? So now you have got the idea what is my non-core demand of the question. What is the issue? This is my non-core demand of the question. This is my non-core demand of the question. Non-core demand means why the Supreme Court has observed that law must adapt to changing social concept and values. So this is the reason why the Supreme Court has emphasized on balancing between the social concept and values, right? So this is my non-core demand of the question. This is not the core demand. My core demand is this, correct? So this is my core demand. Now, how to address the core demand? For example, when you are saying that the constitutional morality, I'm just giving you a template to think about it, right? When you are going to add the points under the constitutional morality, right? So basically you just have to check, you just have to think, what are the various cases where the constitutional morality has been given more importance over what? Over what? Constitutional morality over social morality, constitutional morality over public morality, constitutional morality over the patriarchal norms, right? Constitutional morality over the institutional morality, right? So this is how you have to think when we think about the template, correct? So how the constitutional morality has been given more importance over the social morality, public morality, patriarchal norms, institutional morality. तो इसमें आप सारे केसेस ऐड कर सकते हो, जैसे साबरीमाला केस, नवतेज सिंह जोहर केस, राइट, जोसेफ शाइन केस, all these cases will come under this. Shah Bano, green cat, yes, very good, all those cases, right? Now when we say assess, this is assess, right? Now I will give you a very simple, or in a very layman terms I'll try to explain what does this assess means. Assess keywords का मतलब क्या होता है, right? Though I have already explained to many students, many of you who are in the seniors batch or in the short batch, the meaning, the interpretation of this these tail words or the command words, right? So assess means what? Now just focus on these three command words which are extremely important for the mains point of view. Analyze, examine, analyze, and assess, right? Because many students have asked me this question, sir, we are confused how to basically use these, how the structure or how the tone of the points will be different in when the tail word is examine, analyze, or assess. So I'll give you a very simple example. In a very layman terms, I will try to explain, right? Suppose you are a patient, right? Suppose you are a patient and you go to a doctor. So initially, what does, like, how does the doctor starts with the process? He examine your body, right? He examine your body. He will ask, he will check for everything, right? He will ask your routine, what do you eat, right? When do you sleep, how much you sleep, whether you exercise or not. He will ask you a lot of things, right? So examine is the broad term. Examine is the broad term, right? So once the doctor examine your body, after that he will recommend some test. जाओ आप blood test करवा के आओ, for example LFT, KFT. When you get the report, after getting the test done, doctor analyzes the report. Doctor analyzes the report. In analysis, what does the doctor do? Doctor finds the cause, right? Doctor basically finds the cause, and because of this cause there is an effect in your body. So this cause and effect relationship has to be highlighted in those questions where the question says analyze, where the question says analyze, right? In examine, you may or you may not talk about cause and effect relationship, but in analyze you have to talk about this is the cause and this is the effect. I will tell you the application of this keyword also in when we will be discussing the question, right? Now what is assess? So once the doctor identify, okay, this is the cause and this is the effect on your body, then doctor will prescribe some medicine, right? Doctor will prescribe some medicine. Now after prescription, doctor will call you. He come after 1 week or after 2 weeks, right? When you again visit the doctor, doctor will not examine your previous report. Doctor will not examine your own body, whole body. Doctor will just check your performance. The performance, or to what extent the medicine which has been prescribed has helped you to recover, right? तो assess में क्या है? Assess में हम डॉक्टर क्या करेगा बॉडी को? डॉक्टर ये कहा कि ओके, देयर आर सम इंप्रूवमेंट, बट some issues are there. Some issues or some challenges is still there, right? So in assess, now apply this concept here. Apply the concept in this question. So in this question, can we say that yes, judiciary has been using or has been applying the constitutional morality to interpret the law for the social transformation, but there are some issues, some challenges, not issues, some challenges. Now, when I say challenges or issues may have difference. I'll tell you how the points will get changed. When you will be talking about the issues in assess, you know what you will be writing? You will be writing, for example, there could be a cases of judicial overreach, right? There could be a there are already pendency of cases, right, with the judiciary. So there could be a delay in the process. These are the issues. But you need to understand what are the challenges. Why, despite the constitutional morality, why we are still debating about the social transformation? Why? Because there is social hierarchy in our system, which is very difficult to eliminate, right? Or we can say the politicization of our Indian society, right? The politicians are using the marginalized section or the religious group, right? So वो सब challenges है. अगर जब तक वो challenges नहीं दूर होंगे, तब तक it will be very difficult to eliminate all these issues from the society, no matter how the judiciary going to interpret the law. So there is a difference between the issues and the challenges. Is it clear, everyone? On YouTube, is it clear difference between the issues and challenges? Please, everyone, respond. Right? So, in assess, we are going to talk about the negative, which are challenges, right? Not the issues. Issues हमने यहाँ पे discuss किए हैं. That is the non-core demand of the question. So this is the difference. Examine, analyze, and assess. Examine is broad. Analysis is very like cause and effect relationship, right? So you have to break down the topic itself, right? Break down the topic itself. Again, if you are confused, what is the difference between examine and analyze? I'll give you a very simple question, right? Let me give you a very simple question. For example, there is a question, examine the effectiveness of solid waste management rule. This is the question. And there is another question, analyze the effectiveness of solid waste management rule. Suppose these are the two keywords, examine and analyze, right? Now, when we will be analyzing the statement or this question, analyze the effectiveness of solid waste management rule, what we will be talking about? Obviously, we will be talking about the effectiveness. So there are some like significance, right? On the other hand, we will be talking about what? We are going to break down the solid waste management rule and what is the limitation. इसके अंदर क्या limitations हैं? What is the limitations within the rule? Within the rule. Because analyze, just try to recall that doctor wala analogy. Doctor just analyzes the reports. Based on the reports, he give you the feedback, right? Ki this is the cause and this is the effect. So when doctor or when you are going to analyze the solid waste management rule, you will not look anywhere else. You are just going to focus only on the rules. What are the loopholes in the rules? Why these rules are not effective, right? As far as the formulation is concerned, as far as the implementation is concerned, as far as the quality, the survey is concerned, as far as the feedback is concerned, feedback mechanism is concerned, right? But when we are going to examine the solid waste management rule, this limitation, the scope of this limitation part will be basically going to be more broad. Broad means there are limitations within the rule, plus along with that, what are the other challenges, right? For example, your behavioral issue, right? Society level pe issue kya hai, right? Then as far as the processing is concerned, processing of solid waste is concerned, right? So societal gaps, then technological gap, individual level pe gap. So examine is broad. Examine is basically a broad. Is this clear now, everyone? So now you know when the question says examine or when question says analyze, there is a difference. Or when the question says assess, right? So this is how you have to interpret the demand of the question, right? So I hope this makes sense now. So we will again, I will apply this. There are a lot of things we are going to talk about. There are 5-6 questions I have picked up. I'm not going into the content, okay? Because if we are going to discuss the content, the session is going to be very lengthy, and I know how crucial is this time. Most of you might be feeling ki sir prelims ke questions discuss hone chahiye, but my expertise is in the previous year's questions. Okay, I know I have been analyzing the previous year's question for last 7-8 years, so I know how to interpret the demand, and most of these sessions are going to help those students who have already given the mains, who already have the notes, and that is the reason why we are basically conducting these sessions. How much weightage should be given for positive and issues and challenges? Both same. If the questions are critical command word, you have to give the same weightage under both. You have to give the same weightage, because this is both the things are required. Yes, this is for UPSC 2026 mains. Yes. So this batch, the senior super 50 batch, is for 2026 only, right? Not for 2027. But the same concept we are applying for 2027 also. I hope this is clear as far as the demand of this question is concerned, right? So I'm moving on to the next question. Now, read this question. Discuss the paradoxical nature of uncodified parliamentary privileges in contemporary Indian democracy, and analyze the constraint faced by the legislature in achieving its codification. Now, as far as the demand of this question is concerned, right? Question says, discuss the paradoxical nature of uncodified parliamentary privileges in contemporary Indian democracy, and analyze the constraint faced by the legislature in achieving its codification. Right? Now, most of you, when you attempted this question, I think the most common mistake which I have identified after talking with many of you in one-to-one session, that you failed to address what is this paradoxical nature. Paradoxical nature of parliamentary privileges. Right? So this is, I need to understand why this parliamentary privileges are paradoxical in the nature. Right? This is my first demand of the question. Why I am saying why this is a demand of the question? Because if the parliamentary privileges are not paradoxical in the nature, do you think this question would make any sense? Do you think we are going to talk about the codification? We will debate whether these parliamentary privileges are going or needs to be codified. आप खुद बताओ, just ask yourself, if the parliamentary privileges are not paradoxical in the nature, do you think this question would make any sense? Tell me. It will not make any sense, right? So basically, this paradoxical nature, many of you got confused what to write in the paradoxical nature. भाई paradoxical nature का मतलब ये है there are some conflicting issues as far as the parliamentary privileges are concerned, right? So the first demand of the question is, right? The first demand of the question is not basically, I'll tell you what. So you have to see, this is what I have said in the very beginning. You have to interpret the question in a simplest possible manner, right? In a very simplest possible manner. So I am thinking, why the parliamentary privileges are paradoxical in the nature? Because there are some conflicting issues. They are conflicting in nature. They are conflicting in the nature. And so this is the main issue. Because of this issue, the question is asked. Now, my second subheading of the question would be, if these parliamentary privileges are conflicting in the nature, right? Then I'm going to talk about what, then obviously this question says, analyze the constraint faced by the legislature. I will talk about what are the constraint in codification. Now, this is the issue and this is the challenge. Now, you see how these two words makes a difference in the answer. How these two words makes a difference. अभी तक हम लोग क्या करते थे? We used sometime like I have seen this is very common problem. हम कहीं भी issue लिख दे रहे हैं, कहीं भी challenge लिख दे रहे हैं, right? Because of this issue, the question is asked, and question wants you to analyze the constraint. These are the challenges in codification, and after that you will give the suggestions. After that you will give the suggestions, right? Yes, it is. We can do it. Still we have the time, some time at least, right? We are doing a brainstorming like this for all the previous year's questions. The student who are already part of this program, they already know we are doing a brainstorming of on the previous year's questions of last 20-30 years, and this will help you to analyze the entire topic, right? So now, as far as the conflicting nature is concerned, can anyone tell me how to think about the template for conflicting nature? From like how this parliamentary privileges is conflicting in the nature? It is conflicting with the fundamental right, point number 1, right? Don't you think it is also in conflict with the institutional integrity? Don't you think it is in conflict with the rule of law? It is in the conflict with the you can say democratic principles or democratic values, right? So this is how you have to think. Because of this only we need to analyze. Now, when we are going to analyze, now there you will ask me the question कि sir analyze पूछा है तो इसमें effect भी दिखाएंगे हम, right? Ideally we should also highlight the effect, but this issue is the effect only. This issue is the effect only. Since these because of these challenges, we are not able to codify the parliamentary privileges, and because of that, the parliamentary privileges is paradoxical in nature. तो मेरे आंसर में cause and effect चला गया. Yes or no? Clear? Do you see? In my answer, cause and effect relationship is highlighted. So this is nothing. These kind of keywords in the question are just to create a confusion. Otherwise, if you know why this question is asked. If you know why this question is asked, you can easily interpret the demand of the question. Trust me on this. हम लोग क्या करते हैं ना, एक एक वर्ड के ऊपर फोकस करने लग जाते हैं, एक एक वर्ड के ऊपर, एक एक कीवर्ड के ऊपर. Don't do it. Just read the question once and ask the very first question, why this question is asked. The moment you know why this question is asked, why this question is relevant, you will get the idea what I need to write in my answer. Okay? Now, let's move on to the third question. Okay, now this question is, again, this is a very tricky question, and I will tell you tricky in terms of what, right? So first, because I will make some changes also in this question, and then you will understand what I mean to say. Because, for example, judicial interventions provided temporary fixes, but durable solutions to criminalization of politics must emerge from the legislation. Evaluate this statement in the context of 130th Constitutional Amendment Bill. Now, my friend, this is something you need to be very, very careful, right? When the question says, I'm going to make the changes. When the question says, evaluate this statement, right? In this question says, evaluate this statement. Now, there could be another question. Evaluate, or in this context, for example, in this context, evaluate the provisions of 138th Constitutional Amendment Bill. Now I am asking you a very simple question. What is the difference between these two questions? When the question says evaluate this statement, and in next question, suppose I change this part with this part. In this context, evaluate the provisions of 130th Constitutional Amendment Bill. Now tell me how your answer will change. Because this kind of statement you will find in the UPSC exam itself. And many students commit this mistake many times because we don't focus. Okay, evaluate the core demand is the first part. Yes, very good. So in this question, usually हम लोगों को क्या बताया जाता है? हम लोगों को क्या बताया जाता है कि the first statement is always the context. है कि नहीं है? Whenever, like, I have seen so many videos on the YouTube where the discussions are going in a wrong direction. अगर क्वेश्चन ये बोल रहा है इवैल्यूएट दिस स्टेटमेंट, तो मुझे ये स्टेटमेंट को इवैल्यूएट करना है. I am not going to evaluate the 138th Constitutional Amendment Bill, because if I am going to evaluate the 138th Constitutional Amendment Bill, I need to talk about, I will tell you the structure of the answer in both the cases, right? In both the cases, then it will make more sense to you. For example, evaluate the statement and evaluate in this context, evaluate the 138th Constitutional Amendment Bill, right? I will tell you the structure of, then you will get the clarity. So in this part, in the first part, what I am going to do, I will talk about the judicial intervention. What are the judicial intervention? Right? Then I am saying evaluate. So why judicial intervention are ineffective? ineffective, and how the 130th Constitutional Amendment Bill can provide permanent solution. This is the structure of this question. Now, when I am going to talk about, in this context, evaluate the 130th Constitutional Amendment Bill. In this case, my answer, my structure will change. How my structure will change? My focus will be on this bill. So, in this case, my first demand of the question, this will become my non-core demand of the question. Non-core. And this part will become the core demand of the question. So, in this case, I will talk about, in very brief, judicial intervention. Very brief, okay? Then I will talk about the features of Constitutional Amendment Bill and its significance, how it can prevent the criminalize or control the criminalization of politics, what are the challenges, and then I will give the suggestion. This is the difference when the question is like this. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Online students, yes? Any doubt, please tell me. Right? So, क्वेश्चन को थोड़ा सा फोकस करके देखो कि क्या कीवर्ड है, क्या टेल वर्ड्स हैं, इन व्हाट कंटेक्स्ट द क्वेश्चन इज आस्क्ड. That is the reason why your answers are always monotonous, because you follow the same structure. Significance, challenges, way forward. Significance, issues, way forward. You don't know where to focus more, under which dimensions you have to give, or you have to highlight more depth. The examiner is going to check the depth of your knowledge in the core demand of the question. In this question, in this format, my core demand has changed. In this, my core demand is different. And based on that, I will give you the marks only. Right? So, this is how you have to interpret it. So, in this question, I have to talk about the judicial intervention. Means like PUCL wala case, Lily Thomas case, ADR case, all those cases you can mention. Yes, that is the problem. We fit the answer into our own predetermined structure. Because जो हम लोग पढ़ के जाते, see, this is the biggest problem with the students who only focus on the answer writing. ये मैं 1-to-1 sessions में भी explain करता हूँ. क्या देखो, there are some limitations with the answer writing. Answer writing is an inward process. Inward process means whatever you read, whatever you have in your notes, you just try to replicate it. When you read the question, you just try to replicate it. You are not using your brain. You are not applying any logic, any analysis. आप analysis कर ही नहीं रहे हो. You are just trying to fit the content, whatever is there in your notes, into answer. So that is the reason why we emphasize on the brainstorming. Brainstorming इसीलिए करवा रहे हैं हम लोग. So that you can open up your mind, you can think in a different way, you can apply the various logic. Right? So this is the idea. Now next question. Okay. The Constitution abhors inaction but does not permit judicially imposed timelines on the constitutional authorities. Critically examine this statement in the light of Supreme Court interpretation of Article 200 and 201. Now, you got, I hope, the same question. Question says, critically examine this statement. Critically examine this statement. Right? So, now, what is the core demand of the question here? What is the core demand of the question here? Tell me. What should be the structure? So, the first, Constitution abhors inaction but does not permit judicially imposed timelines. Right? you need to analyze this part very carefully, because when I saw your answer, most of you have missed this particular demand, right? So you should ask yourself, question says critically examine, right? Examine करना है हमको, है ना? We have to examine this issue. We have to examine. What do we have to examine? That the Constitution abhors inaction, right? In the first statement, there are two sub-statement. There are two sub-statement. Now, watch it very carefully. Constitution abhors inaction, right? But does not permit judicially imposed timelines on constitutional authorities. Both are two different dimensions, and both are my two core demand, right? Because when we are going to examine this part, right? So it says constitution abhor inaction. Abhors inaction का मतलब क्या है? No time limit. No time limit does not mean inaction. No time limit does not mean inaction or no action, right? This is my, now you have to think why this arrangement, why it is so. Why it is so? Why the Constitution has prescribed for no time limit for the president, for the governor. There is no provision to provide the reason for withholding the assent to the bills, right? So why? What is the logic behind? आप examine कर रहे हो चीजों को. So you have to first talk about why the Constitution does not talk about timeline. There is no time limit, right? So when we say there is no time limit, how do we say it? जैसे Article 200, 201 में क्या है? यही चीज है. There is no time limit for the governor. The governor is also not liable to give any reason for withholding the assent to the bills, right? So you need to first talk about why the Constitution have no time limit. That is my first part. But the problem is, no time limit does not mean inaction, because inaction की वजह से there will be some implications. There are going to be implication. What will be the implication? If there will be inaction, there will be a democratic implication, right? There will be a implication as far as the accountability is concerned, as far as institutional integrity is concerned, as far as the constitutional morality is concerned, right? So these are the implications. So this is my first part of the question, that the Constitution abhor inactions, right? But does not permit judicially imposed timeline on constitutional authority. अब इसको कैसे हम करेंगे? Now, so I will remove this and then I'll talk about structure of this answer, right? So my first subheading is, you need to justify no time limit, right? Then you need to talk about the implication of inaction, right? Now, what is the next subheading? Tell me. How are we going to examine this statement? Tell me. Yes, Gaurav, checks and balance, separation of power. Yes. So what are we going to use the third subheading? Tell me. बताओ भी. Separation of power. I'm talking about the subheading. Gaurav, I'm talking about the subheading. What is the subheading? We are going to talk about sorry, the judicial interpretation. Right? What judiciary has said. Or basically, you can also say, or either you can use the judicial interpretation in the introduction also, right? But the third theme should be, the third subheading should be, what are the issues, right? Or rather, you can say the issues with judiciary imposing timelines. This will be the third subheading, and then you are supposed to give some suggestions. अगर आप जुडिशियल इंटरप्रिटेशन इंट्रोडक्शन में इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहे हो, वेल एंड गुड. So this is how the structure of this answer should be, and many of you have not even touched this part in your answer. Right? I'm not really sure why it was so difficult. So basically, why I know why you have done it, why you might have misinterpreted the demand of the question, because आपने ये चीज नहीं ध्यान दी होगी. Critically examine this statement. Statement को examine करिए. Not the article 200, 201. Not this part has nothing to do with the core demand. Right? I hope this is clear. Any doubt in this question? Any doubt in this question? No? Shall we move on to the next question? Chalo. Second last question. Okay. Again, this is a very good question. State autonomy cannot be pursued in isolation from national integrity. In the light of Kurian-Joseph Committee's mandate, evaluate how constitutional design can reconcile decentralized governance with the unified national constitutional order. Now, we all know that सबने पढ़ा होगा कि during Kurian-Joseph Committee was established by the Tamil Nadu government, right, for center-state relation, to review the center-state relation. But the question is, evaluate how the constitutional design can reconcile decentralized governance with unified national constitutional order. So यहाँ पे question क्या पूछ रहा है direct? How the constitutional design can reconcile. This means there must be some issues in the design itself, right? There must be some issues as far as the framework is concerned, correct? But many students will get confused. State autonomy cannot be pursued in isolation. How to fit this statement? How to fit this statement, right? So, in a very simple terms, right? Whenever you find these kind of question, whenever you are doing a brainstorming, always pick up a pen and paper and try to write down the way I am writing, right? For example, Kurian-Joseph Committee. Kurian Committee was established for center-state relation, and it demanded state autonomy. It demanded for more state autonomy. But there is a debate, if we will give more autonomy to the state, it may go against the national interest, right? kahin na kahin it may go against the national interest, right? But the problem is we also have to consider the state autonomy. We cannot snatch the autonomy from the state. There are various incidents we have seen in the recent past, right? So when the question says how constitutional design can reconcile, तो यहां पे जो way forward लिखोगे आप, that will address that part of the question, right? So now, as far as the overall demand of the question or the structure of the answer is concerned, right? First, you need to talk about the issues. Why? The state demanding autonomy. That is my first demand of the question. Why state demanding more autonomy? Right? है कि नहीं है? Then second, what will be the challenges? What will be the challenges? Right? Or before that, what you can do as a non-core demand of the question I'm talking about, you can talk about how the basically constitutional design is there as far as the center-state relation is concerned. In legislative sphere, administrative sphere, financial sphere, but no need to explain that. Focus is this. This is my core demand of the question. Because if these issues would not be there, this question would not be valid. The Korean Joseph Committee would not be established by the government. अगर ये इशू ही नहीं होता तो तमिलनाडु गवर्नमेंट क्यों कोरियन जोसेफ कमेटी एस्टैब्लिश करती ही नहीं, right? So first we need to talk about why the states are demanding more autonomy. What are the issues as far as the center-state relations are concerned? And if we give more autonomy to the state, what will be the challenges we will face? What will be the challenges we will face? And in this context, to address the state autonomy and the national interest, what will be your suggestion? As far as the constitutional design is concerned, what are the challenges? Now, when you are talking about the issues, इसमें आप एक पॉइंट और भी ऐड कर सकते हैं, issues with constitutional design itself. जिसकी वजह से the state autonomy is being compromised. What are the issues, gaps in the constitutional design as far as the center-state relation is concerned? So this is going to be basically my cause and this will be effect. Right? And then if we give more autonomy to the states, as the Joseph Committee, Korean Joseph Committee has recommended, what will be the challenges? What will be the challenges? And then the way forward. Right? Is this clear now? Any doubt in this part? Tell me. Does it make sense? Gaurav, that user runs. Is this clear now? Please tell me. कुछ भी doubt है तो पूछो. Or shall I move on with the last question, the sixth question? And because this was the question, again, many students have thought about the wrong structure. They used the wrong structure, right? So this is how you need to think. So after decoding the demand of the question, See how simple it is. Why this question is asked? Because there are some issues. This is the issues. Why these issues exist? Because there are some flaws in the constitutional design, flaws in constitutional design, right? And when we are trying, or when we are thinking about giving more autonomy to the state, there are challenges, which question says, pursued in isolation from the national. It cannot be pursued in the pursued in isolation from national integrity. Then suggestion, right? So now the last question. For example, how does the rise of anti-immigration policies in Western democracies affect India's diaspora interest and labor mobility? Right? Like many students have got confused as far as the demand of this question is concerned. Why? They started thinking about how does the rise of anti-immigration policies, for example, recently the Trump administration has raised the visa fees and all, right? So in this question, when question says how does the rise of anti-immigration policies in Western democracies affect India's diaspora, हम लोगों ने इसके आगे सोचा ही नहीं है. Many of you have not even thought about the other aspects. You need to ask yourself, when we are talking about the Indian diaspora, right? We are not going to talk about their education, their health, their income, right? This is very narrow point. This is very narrow thought process. When you are talking about the India's diaspora, you always have to think from the national interest point of view. This part, national interest point of view. Now you can think national interest, right? As far as the soft power is concerned, as far as remittances is concerned, all these will get affected, right? So national interest के point of view से सोचना है हमको, not from the individual India's diaspora के point of view से. बहुत लोगों ने आंसर लिखा है हेल्थ खराब, मतलब many diaspora basically visit the Western countries for health checkup and all. So not in that sense, okay? Always link it with the national interest. So this is again a misinterpretation of the question, right? And as far as the labor mobility is concerned, now I'm not really sure why you are not able to generate the point as far as the labor mobility is concerned. When we are thinking how the when we are going to think about how the rise of anti-immigration policies will affect the labor mobility, right? The student from the senior batch, how can we think about the broad framework, the template to generate the point? Because this labor mobility is itself a point. Under the national interest, it can be one point, but this is a separate question. So labor mobility की बात कर रहे हैं हम. Labor mobility, how can we apply the template? How can we think about it? Tell me. Basically, mobility restrict हो जाएगी, right? Due to rise of anti-immigration policies. Restrict किस sense में होगी? As far as the sector wise, as far as the region wise, right? Because if suppose right now, most of the talented, educated people, where they go for employment and all, they go to the Western countries. But when the Western countries will have very strict anti-immigration policies, what they will do, they will start shifting maybe in the South Asian region. So labor mobility will get restricted in the Western countries. As far as the sector wise is concerned, right? In which sector you will have, or you will you know that like the contribution of Indian youth in IT, in service sector. So if, don't you think due to anti-immigration policies, there will be change, right? There will be restriction as far as the mobility, labor mobility is concerned in the service sector, in IT sector. Yes, tell me. And because of this, what will happen? Because of this, what will happen? Maybe the labor will start migrating to other region. So that is how you have to apply the logic to generate the point, right? I hope this is clear. So this was the last question. So these were the 6 questions which I have seen, I have picked up where many of you have made the mistake. I hope now this is clear, but still if you have doubt, you can come for one-to-one. But for that, you have to write the test. Many of you have still not written the test. So from next time, test 2 discussion, we are going to conduct it on Zoom, right? So the first session, I wanted to take it on for everyone so that whoever like preparing for the mains, still preparing for the mains, who have given the mains, who have given the interviews, they should know not to repeat these kind of mistake when they are interpreting the demand of the question. So the bottom line is, no matter how many answers you write, this skill can only be developed, only word I'm using in double quotes, it can only be developed with the brainstorming. Otherwise, ye choti mistake will cost you huge, right? You will lose a lot of marks. Yaar, आधा एक number, just half marks, 1 marks extra can change your fate, right? So target just half or 1 marks in your answer. And that half or 1 marks cannot be achieved without this particular skill, which can be gained through the brainstorming sessions, right? I hope this is clear. So I'll end up this session. Anyone have any doubt who is not a part of the senior program, you can ask me, or otherwise you can fill the form given in the description box. You can bring your copies, you can bring your notes if you want to discuss with me, other mentors. Definitely you can come to Vajiram 7B building. It's in Karol Bagh Metro Gate number 5. And we can talk about the entire strategy, entire plan, right? So any question, anything you may want to ask online students, please? Or shall we wrap up the session? All done? Okay, so thank you so much for joining me, and I'll connect with all of you in next session. I'll try to bring something very innovative, which will help you to prepare for the mains. So thank you so much.